Vanessa Collier is an American blues, funk, and soul saxophonist, singer, and songwriter. She has been nominated for 5 Blues Music Awards and won one in 2019 and another one in 2020. Vanessa, welcome to Interview of the Blues.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Greg. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for stopping by. So let me go way back to when you were a child in Dallas, Texas. 9 years old. What got you hooked on the saxophone?
Well, I saw it on a TV show. I used to watch the sitcom with Mary-Kate and Ashley after school, and on one of the episodes, the dad like goes into the attic and whips out this tenor saxophone, and it was one of those whiplash moments of like, oh my gosh, what is that? I have to know what that is. I have to play it. Mom, can we rent one? So thankfully, after I had taken piano lessons right up to that, and
Mhm.
I don't know how my mom did it, because I really didn't like the teacher, and so I would go in crying and screaming and whatever, just like, I don't want to go. And thankfully she was like, oh, okay, I'll give this music thing another shot. So she rented me one, and it's like 20 something years since then, and it's amazing. It's awesome. I love that instrument. It's just got so many nice qualities to it.
Well, you sound great.
Thank you.
I mean, your music. I started out playing your was it Meet My Shadow?
Yeah, Meeting My Shadow. Yeah.
Meeting My Shadow. Yeah, I started out with that album on my show,
Yeah,
and then I've
thank
gotten
you.
your last two as well. So thanks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So when did you get into discovering blues music?
um well, I mean, it started early. It really started early for me, because we had jazz band 6th grade. And it was like, man, it was before school, so I swear it was like you had to get there like 6:30 in the morning or something, and
Mhm.
I was not an early riser. But still, you could get me out of bed most mornings to do jazz band. And like the first thing that we were, how we learned to improvise was over a 12-bar blues. And I was like, wait, you can play, here's a scale, here's 2 scales, like here are chord changes, like, oh, I can like express myself. Oh, I can play all this stuff. I can play whatever I want. Oh my gosh. And so that was like, from that moment, I loved a 12-bar blues, and of course, I ventured off into many different realms. I studied with Chris Vidala at the University of Maryland and learned jazz and funk and soul, and I mean, everything. And then it kind of all came back when my last year at Berkeley, when I got to tour with Joe Louis Walker, and it was like, oh yeah, that 12-bar blues thing. I love it. This is where my heart is. So I've come back to it, and I realized that the blues is pretty much the roots of all the music that I love. I mean,
Right.
country and gospel are all kind of like in the blues. They just kind of went different branches,
Mhm.
and the funk and the soul and the R&B stuff is like totally up my alley, and all started from that stuff too. So it's all in there.
When did your family move from Dallas, Texas to Maryland?
I think it was 98.
How
So
old were you at the time?
I was 7. I was gonna turn 8 that year, but 7.
Okay.
And we moved to Hershey, Pennsylvania for a year, so that was kind of awesome to get to go and smell chocolate on my way to school every day. Can't beat that.
Right.
And then we moved to Maryland the year after that. So
How
um,
did you living in Maryland? How did you connect with Chris Vidal? I mean, he's a jazz legend.
yeah, absolutely. So I feel like I've just been really fortunate in my life. And my middle school band director had played with him. He was like an LA session drummer out in LA for a little bit, and ran across Chris and stayed good friends with him. And then Chris, at some point, became the director of jazz studies at the University of Maryland, while of course continuing to play with Chuck Mangione and sit in with the National Symphony Orchestra, and calls for Aretha Franklin and Stevie Wonder and BB King and all this. And here I am, like a sixth grader coming in to try and take a lesson with him, and my middle school band director was great. He was like, you got to hear this kid, she's great, and you just take time and hear her. And that started a 7-year, mentorship with Chris, where he taught me like everything. I mean, we did classical stuff of really getting the technique and talking about, finger control and breath control and all that kind of stuff. And then to the more fun stuff of playing music and playing jazz and talking about changes in theory and all that kind of stuff too.
And then you go to Berkeley.
Yeah.
Now, here's something interesting that I didn't know about Berkeley.
Yeah.
At the commencement, there's a concert, graduation.
Yeah.
And you got to play with Kathy Mattea, Annie Lennox, and Willie Nelson.
Yeah.
That's an interesting combination. How'd that come about?
Oh yeah. So I think, again, I feel like very lucky because every year Berkeley's great. I mean, their commencement concerts are always fantastic. But this year, like, I don't know, Willie Nelson, Annie Lennox, Carole King, and they brought Chris Christopherson too. So it was like, how do you get better than that? I mean, it's like great songwriters, and just, I mean, to me, Annie Lennox and Carole King are both two very powerful forces in music and people in general. And so, again, I was just super lucky. I don't know who was choosing the recipients that year, but I thank them. So because it's just very, I mean, Annie Lennox delivered the commencement address, and like I still go back and watch it because she sang through Aretha. She sang through all the songs that she grew up with as part of her address, and it was just like the most powerful thing to send you off into the world of making a career. So again, very lucky.
So you graduate Berkeley, and you end up touring with Joe Louis Walker.
Yeah.
What was that experience like, and how did he influence your blues, the way you deal with things today in the music business on your own?
Yeah, I mean, he influenced me a lot. I think, so I started touring with Joe like the fall of my senior year at Berkeley. And how it came about was like my friend was playing drums for him at the time, and it was in the summer, and they were doing a tour, and they came through Philadelphia, and he was like, hey, where are you in town? You should come out, because Joe loves to bring up younger talent, and I think he'd really like your playing. And so I'm on Spotify or YouTube and all that, like checking out Joe's music, because I was totally ignorant of him, sadly. And I start listening, and I'm like, oh man, and I'm playing along, and I'm just like, oh, this is my stuff. This is my, he's got the gospel thing, the roots and blues thing, of course. And then he goes into the rock world, and, a little bit of funk here and there, he's got that whole thing. And I was like, oh, I'm super excited. All right. I might get up tonight. If he asks, I'd do it. So I went, and I met him on the break in between the two sets. And he was like, oh, okay, did you bring a horn? And I was like, yeah, I've got it with me. It's like right here. I tucked it under so nobody could see it, And he's like, all right. And he goes off and like, spends the rest of his break like talking to people. And as he's heading back to the stage, he goes, you coming? And I was like, sure. And I grabbed my horn, and I'm like rushing to get it together. They've started the first song, and he's like, come on. And I played one or two songs, and I was kind of like ready to, it's generally etiquette to get off at that point, move off the stage, you've had your time. And I go to do that, and Joe's like, hey, where you going? Stay up here, And so I stayed up for the whole second set. And then afterwards he was like, hey, you want to go on the road? And of course, I'm 20 at the time, I think. And I was like, yeah, of course. Let's do this, whatever, throw it my way. I don't really care. Don't pay me, whatever. And so it led to a year and a half of touring with Joe. And, just, he's such a he has such a wealth of knowledge of not just music, but history in general. And so I learned so much about, you know, the places we were going. We spent a month in Turkey touring all around the country there and like learning about Cappadocia and like the beginning of civilization, you know. So I learned a lot from him, and I think it was just a great meld for me to get a foot in this world, because he's like, you know, he does all the stuff that I love. He does traditional, but he also does like, you know, all the offshoots that I love too. So it was just a great moment for me to step out and step into a band and get my toes wet and see if this is what I wanted to do.
You have a lot of varied influences. I was reading like from Nora Jones
Yeah.
to the Wood Brothers,
Yeah.
you know, and of course Bonnie Raitt,
Of
the
course.
blues,
Yes.
and then
Who isn't? Yeah.
Cannonball Adderley, which you know, the
Yeah.
saxophone. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how did how do you mesh all them together to come up with what, you know, you bring all that to your style of music, or
Yeah, I mean, I think everything that you listen to seeps in somehow. So, you know, I grew up in Texas, like hearing country music on the radio every day.
right?
And, you know, I didn't realize the parallels between country music and blues. You know, they're just stories. It's like everybody's just telling a story. And so, you know, that seeps into my songwriting. It seeps into my playing of like trying to build a solo and, you know, tell a story with the horn without words, you know. It's kind of been my approach. And I think all of those people, why they speak to me so much is they're so soulful. They play and they sing and you feel it. Like it's something that just grabs you. And that's kind of always what I've strived to do, is to play. It doesn't have to be technically accurate. I don't have to play all the right notes, but like, is the feeling there, you know? And that's what I've hoped and still hope to get across, you know, with every record, with every show, with every solo, you know what I mean?
In 2014, you released your debut CD,
Mm-hmm.
Heart, Soul, and Saxophone.
Yeah.
Critical acclaim, by the way. And your backing band for the album consisted of former members from Berkeley.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And on this album, you have a song titled Bad News Bears,
Yes.
which I understand you dedicated to a fellow saxophone player, Max Cowan.
Yes.
Okay. Tell us who Max was and what influence did he have on you as a fellow saxophonist?
Well, Max and I started saxophone together. So, you know, fourth grade, sitting, you don't know how to put the thing together or what to put, you know, where the reed goes and all that. And
Mhm.
I sat in class and learned how to play saxophone. And it's like, you know, I sat next to him from fourth grade until junior year of high school. And you know, sometimes that's a little bit of a competition thing. It always is. You know, I'm the only girl in the section, and
Mhm.
you know, that kind of thing. I played well. So that was always a really fun camaraderie. Such a, like, Max just brightened everybody's day. You know, he's like one of those dudes that just like always like helping uplift you if you had a bad day. Max, for me, you know, I was taking my junior year, I took calculus. And I also, I think it was junior year. Anyway, he was on the phone with me for like an hour because I missed a bunch of stuff for a knee surgery and all kinds of stuff. So he was just like on the phone with me, helping to explain these topics that I didn't quite get from the teacher, you know, and even going to some extra help sessions. It was just like, I don't know, man. Calculus, I don't know. So, you know, it was like a very good friendship for me. And, you know, unfortunately he passed in 2008 and it was like super sudden. And I honestly didn't know what to do with all those emotions, like burying your friend. Like I buried my friend at 16 or 17. I can't remember how old I was, 17. You know, and it was such a tough thing that all those feelings were stirring around for a while. And when I put that record out, it was like 6 years later, or almost 6 years later. And I just wanted to write something to uplift people the way Max did. And it's such a fun tongue-in-cheek song, that I, most of the time I close my show with it even now. Like that's usually the encore, because it just has that energy. It's New Orleans, and it's all about celebrating the life of people, life of Max, and just life in general, and reminding you that there's always good and there's always something to live for and celebrate, even if stuff isn't going right. So that's how I like to leave everybody.
Oh, now, following the release of your debut album, you entered the John Lennon songwriting competition.
Yeah.
You became top 3 finalist. Then
Mhm.
in 2016, you reached the semifinals at the International Blues Challenge in Memphis.
Yeah.
What was that like? How old were you at the time, by the way?
25.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what was it like for a 25-year-old to end up in Memphis playing on the stages with all those other blues musicians and bands from around the world that converged for a week or 4 days down there and making it to the semifinals?
Yeah. I think that was sort of like a turning point for me, because I'm honestly, I surprise everybody when I say this, but I'm very much an introvert. I've had to learn stagecraft, and really coming out of my shell and being it's still me, but it's like this other side that usually only my close friends get to see, I guess.
Okay.
So, I think for me, that whole experience was like, oh, okay, I have something to say that people are kind of interested in. I'm interested in it, of course, because I wrote half the stuff, but um, we packed Club 152 on Beale Street like 3 nights in a row, where there were people like, they opened the windows, those big windows, because there was a line of people out in the street trying to see our show, and so it felt really cool to have that support, not only from just fans that were there to see all the bands, but there are a couple bands there like Little Boys Blue from Tennessee, and man, like JD's on harp, and I mean that band was like one of my favorites. So you run into people that you're just like, man, you're just rooting for them, I mean,
Yeah.
so it was such an exciting opportunity, and to get to come out of it and like tour, and I got quite a few festivals out of it, and I mean, I was just happy to finally feel like I'm finding my footing and my calling. Felt very much reassured in that.
Which festivals did you play?
Well, we had one, the Midland, I'm forgetting what it's called, but it's in Midland, Texas. We played that one, out of that, and I think it was like a full year, a year and a half later.
Okay.
But and then of course we represented the Billtown Blues Festival, Billtown Blues Association, and played their festival as well, which was great. So, and then I keep running across people that were like, oh yeah, I saw you in Memphis. That's right, we had your eye, It was a couple of years down the road, and I still remember it. So
In 2017, you released your second album, Meeting My
mhm.
Shadow, on
Yes,
Rough Records.
yes.
How did you hook up with that international German label?
Yeah, so I actually got an email out of the blue from Thomas, where he was like, "Hey, I have this blues caravan thing. We do a record deal, and we do 60 to 80 dates overseas, and do this whole tour for like 9 of the 12 months of the year, kind of thing, or over 12 months rather." Um, and so, at first, honestly, like I'm very much a believer, especially coming out of Berkeley. They do teach you this, is that the model of the big record company is kind of it's not necessary anymore, because
Yeah.
there's so many tools available to you as an independent artist. So as long as you're aware and you've got a foot in the game, in everything, then you can kind of get by. So that was kind of the way that I approached things. And then honestly, my mom was kind of like, 60 to 80 dates overseas would be a great thing. Maybe try and get your foot in over there. So that's what I ended up doing. I did what ended up to be a one record deal, and then played the dates overseas. And I'm very thankful for a lot of those things, because it allowed me to meet Laura Chavez, who I think is just like one of the most underrated guitar players out there on the scene today. She's just she's an incredible rhythm guitarist, and then she steps into the light to solo, and it's like I swear she grows, and she doubles in size and becomes this giant force. And just has a great voice on the guitar. So I'm very thankful for that opportunity to meet her and play with her, and I don't know that it would have come about any other way. So
there's 12 tracks on Meeting My Shadow.
Yes.
And you have a couple cover tunes that one definitely is very interesting.
Yeah.
Which is the U2 song, When Love Comes to Town.
Yeah.
But you also chose Sister
Rosetta Tharpe, yeah.
Song, Up Above My Head.
Yes.
So what made you, because I noticed on a couple of your albums you have some cover songs. What is it that, how do you go about in the process of, if you're going to do a cover for an album, how do you go about deciding, I want to put that song on this album? I think it fits.
Yeah, well, When Love Comes to Town was one that I had put in my live set for maybe a year or two. And so it was one I was very comfortable with and really enjoyed singing. It's still in the set, from time to time. And Up Above My Head was actually like inspired because I don't know that I knew about Sister Rosetta Tharpe until I heard the Wood Brothers. And then they talk about how much of an influence she is on them. And I was like, huh? Okay, so this Up Above My Head song that they do is a Sister Rosetta Tharpe song. So then I started listening to her, and I think again, my balance of genres kind of comes into play because I always like that's a gospel tune that I love, and again, just I don't know, it felt right. So I think that's what it is for me. It's like songs that I'm either just like dying to cover, or it just feels like the right vibe for that record. And I can say that about the latest record as well. That's how I chose my three, was like I was just aching to play those tunes. So
now I'll tell you what my favorite song on Meeting My Shadow is.
Yeah.
2-part sugar, 1-part lime.
Yeah.
I love that song. I can hear the Professor Longhair on the piano in that song.
All right. Yeah.
Cannonball Adderley on the sax.
Oh, thank you.
So what's the story behind that song?
Yeah. So
I think about your mom in there
it
too.
It is. Yeah. So it's kind of my one of my tributes. I keep writing songs about my mom, but that one is really again, it's meant to be a kind of fun one, uplifting one, but I think my mom has been like probably my biggest role model, definitely, not probably, across the board, as a person, career wise. She's made such a difference in so many people's lives teaching. And I grew up kind of watching her be this wonderful, gentle, very warm spirit, and everyone in the room is kind of just like, they all kind of like tend to focus on her. It's like it's a thing. She's very quiet about it, but it happens, and I always admired that as a kid. I was like, wow, that's so cool. She's like not calling attention to herself, but somehow everybody listens to her, and then I've also seen her, like, she is one of the most I don't know the word, but she's just always standing up for what is right. The people that get wrong, she stands up for them, even if it's at her own at the cost of, for her. So this song kind of talks about that interplay a little bit of like 2-part sugar, 1-part lime. It's like you got to be sweet in this life, and regardless of how people treat you, it's good for you and your soul to just be you. And then the second part is like, you also have to stand up for yourself and stand up for the thing that is right, that you feel is right. So that's kind of where this song comes from, but it also mentions my mom's apple pie, which is like the best in the world. So again, it's very lighthearted and fun. That's how I like to keep it.
Okay. So you have a protest song on that album. Cry
Yeah.
Over.
Yes.
I mean, it fits the mood of what's been going on the last 4 years in this country.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know?
yeah.
I love that song.
Yeah, man, that's one I keep wanting to play live, and we really haven't gotten to play it. So,
Really?
yeah, but I
It's
love
just
that
that
song too.
you guys in the band just haven't gotten in sync with it, or
Yeah, we just I think that one requires a little bit of rehearsal because the center section is like, the hits are kind of like off these 16th note things, and
okay,
they tend not to be super tight unless we practice. So if we're on these long runs, it just makes sense to go with what we know a little bit better, and then
right,
when
right.
we have some off time, we'll work it in.
And then in 2018, you release "Honey Up,"
Yes.
and at the Briggs Farm Music Festival,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Um,
Yep.
and it spent 9 weeks on the Billboard Top Blues Album charts.
Yes.
And early in the year, you were nominated in 2 categories that year at the Blues Music Awards: Contemporary
Hmm.
Blues Female Artist of the Year and Horn Player of the Year.
Yes.
You were in some elite company there with, for the Contemporary Blues Female Artist, Shamika Copeland.
Yeah.
You were in
Yep.
Beth Hart. Then on
Hmm.
the sax side, it was Trombone Shorty,
Yeah.
Alba Steele,
Yeah.
and Jimmy Carpenter, who I
Yeah.
love him, man. Uh,
Me too. Me too.
so what's it like having your album getting nominated and recognized so widely and being that kind of a category with all those top players?
Yeah.
What the awards?
Man, it's such an honor. And that's the thing is like, I think at the end of the day, I really, all these times I've been nominated, I don't sit there and go, yeah, like I hope I win it, like,
Mhm.
I mean, of course you have that feeling, but at the end of the day, it's like, man, I'm being nominated by these people. The nominating committee is putting me up there in the ranks with these people that I look up to and that I respect. um you know Shamika is such a kind person, and on stage has such a powerful voice that it's like, yeah, all right, I just love everything that she's about. So it's always like, it's great to be in that good company, and it's like crazy to win. It's like, for the horn player, it's like, it's crazy when you win it, because I really thought the first year that I won, I thought it was going to Jimmy. I really did, because I just respect him so much. And the second year I was like, oh, it's totally going to Trombone Shorty. Come on now. And because I think he was in the category the first time I was nominated, and he won. So I was just like, I was sitting there this year, like, not even expecting it. I was like in my sweats, just sitting back and sitting with my mom, and then I hear my name and I was like, oh, what? So it's always good, man. It feels great to be among greats, and I just feel super humble and thankful for that.
Speaking of playing with greats, you had the opportunity, an impromptu opportunity on the legendary Blues Cruise to play with Buddy Guy.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Oh man, I was it was crazy. Because not only am I up there with Buddy Guy, which I'm used to being a horn player, so I'm totally content to sit there and not solo and just play horn parts.
Mhm.
But I'm up there with Kingfish and Mr.
Wow.
Sip and Marcus King, and I'm just sitting there like, and they're trading guitar battles, and I'm just like, this is so cool. And then he starts playing to me, and I'm like, all right, well, I guess I gotta play, I gotta bring it. And I think I surprised him a little bit, because I'm quiet and I'm unassuming, and so you don't expect me to play like I play. At least that's what I've been told. So it was very cool to like trade and feel like you can have a conversation with anybody across any genre, across uh, any generation. You know what I mean? That's just like, he's been at the forefront of the blues for so long, and it was great to just sit there and have a conversation without speaking.
Are you always writing songs? Do you set time aside to write?
No, I wouldn't say that. I was for a while, and I probably should be during this pandemic time, but I've actually focused on some other things. So,
Okay.
but I think I write really well under pressure. And so when I say I have a record, that I want to get out, and I start setting dates for that, then I really start writing. And it's not like, what I kind of mean is, like, I do a lot of driving, so it's like I'm sitting and recording little song ideas into my phone all the time. But to sit down and actually hash out a song I have to have a purpose for it, more so than like, oh, I'm just going to write a song today. That doesn't seem to be the way my brain works. It's got to be like, oh, I have this thing upcoming, I should put out a record this year. Maybe I'll start writing. um I think I'm just interested in too many things, and I'm averse to a schedule, I guess.
When you're
I'm
ready
not
to go
great.
into the studio to
Yeah.
record, do you have all the songs picked out for the album, or are you still kind of deciding after you get in there going, well, you know what? We kind of like that one that we did that's kind of been in the can for a while. Let's pull that one out and throw that one in here.
So far that has not been my process. It's kind of been like, oh, okay, how many songs do I have for this record? Let's go in and record it. So it's like a couple days of rehearsal. We haven't so far played those tunes out on the road before we record or anything, which is a
Mhm.
dream of mine. I want to do that, but so far it's been like I write them, we rehearse them, and then it goes on record. So it's a very short turnaround time for that. And then I I'm fine to like nixnay one of those if it doesn't work, but I'm probably not going to add anything that we don't have anything in the can, really. It's all been put out.
Right,
So
right. What is the process like for you and your bandmates when you get in the studio, recording wise?
I think it kind of depends, because I've had different groups every time. The first group was, of course, my first band, and then the second one was put together by the record company. So that was like a little bit more of trying to get to know each other and how each other plays in the studio. Versus, this last record, for me, the Heart on the Line record was like, I know how Laura plays. I know how William plays on keys. I know how Nick plays on drums. And then I knew how each of the bass players plays as well. So I kind of had an idea that everything was gonna kind of mesh a certain way. And it, thankfully, again, I don't know if it's just luck or what, but everything just seems to come together. So we'll play a couple takes, go in and listen, see what's working, what's not working. And I think that group in particular on this last record is just so good at weeding out things that we don't need. And I think that's kind of been key for us, is just laying down a good take, and let the road is where it can kind of breathe and take on a new life. And at some point I'd love to do a live record of showcasing how these tunes have progressed and changed over the 5.5, 6 years I've been touring.
Okay. I find it interesting that when you put out your debut album, it was on Phoenix Fire Records.
Hmm.
Then your next record, you went to Rough.
Hmm.
Okay. Then your third record, you're at American Showplace.
Oh no, that's actually it's misquoted. That's also
Oh,
Phoenix Fire Records.
oh, okay. Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, I forget. I don't know where that is written, but yeah.
Okay. Now, is that your label,
It
Phoenix Fire
is my
Records?
label. Yeah.
Okay. How'd you come up
Yep.
with the name Phoenix Fire?
So Phoenix is my favorite record of Cannibal Adderley's. Well, really, it's the first one that I heard of his, and it's stayed my favorite because it's been the first. It's the one where he starts to kind of go off into the fusion world and, like, play all this funky stuff, I should say. Um, and so that was kind of where the Phoenix, the Phenix comes from, rather than the traditional spelling. It was from that record. But also, I think for me, Phoenix, well, not just for me, mythology, right? It signifies a new birth. And I like to think of every record as being sort of like a new approach to the same person. It's another level, it's another life lived, or, it's whatever you've learned since the last record. That's what everyone should be. So trying to just keep learning. I think that's where it comes from.
Okay. Last year, 2020, still in the pandemic.
Yeah.
You released Heart on the Line.
Yeah.
It's been hailed as an inventive because it covers many different styles.
Yeah.
It keeps that classic Collier vibe. I feel,
Yeah.
What is the Collier vibe? So prevalent in this album.
Yeah. So I do feel like this record is the most me, and it's because of the pandemic that I got to spend so much time on it and make it so much of what I heard in my head. Usually it's like, you get to the end and you're at a deadline and it's got to get out, so I didn't always get to sure up the horn lines and add Barry sax and all these things that I did on this record that I couldn't do before, the layers and layers of background vocals. I mean, so I think what has become the Collier vibe is usually it is varied. All of my records you can't say is straight up the middle anything. And I celebrate that. Some people don't like that it's not a straight up the middle blues record or straight up the middle R&B record or whatnot. But like essentially I'm just playing songs that mostly that I wrote and that feel good and that have a message that is very much coming from my heart and my soul. And I think that's, my first record, I called it Heart, Soul, and Saxophone. And it's like, that's kind of been my mantra through everything. That's what you should hear on every record, is you should hear my heart and my soul and my stories and also my saxophone playing, So that's what I think it is. Everybody's got an opinion though.
Now, earlier in the interview, you said besides not writing as much as you feel you should during the pandemic.
Sure, yeah.
What else have you been doing with your life during the pandemic?
Oh man, I've done so much, and it's been great because, I think because I've been independent, I've kind of done everything. I take it all on my shoulders and I just go and go and go. And I don't really stop to think like, oh, I'm kind of tired, So getting off the road, I was like, oh, this is kind of nice. I spend a little bit more time on my own, due to the introvert thing. But I started doing stuff that I've been wanting to do. So like, I reached out to a local organic farm and started working there, like volunteering there a couple days a week for about 7 or 8 months through their whole harvest season. And that's been wonderful. I lost my dog in March, had to put her to sleep. And so that was rough for a little while. And then, a couple months later, or 5-6 months later, after dealing with the farm dogs, I got 2 who are asleep behind me. So they've been an adventure. I started a yoga practice like 3-4 days a week. So really kind of getting back to tuning into, how am I feeling? How's everything like working, making sure I'm flexible and staying healthy. I cook a lot. So it's, it's very much a recentering for me. But I'm ready to go back out whenever, whenever things open up again. I'm ready. So
what kind of food do you like to cook?
Oh, everything. At the beginning, it was kind of like I did some Mexican stuff, which was great, like chilaquiles and I don't know what you call it, but anyway, I made a lot of Mexican beans. It was great. And then my mom likes this fish dish, so I make a pan-seared halibut with a lemon beurre blanc sauce, and it kind of just depends what mood I'm in. I keep opening cookbooks and learning.
I want to talk about something that's kind of dear to your heart, I think.
Yeah.
Um, you run music clinics across the country,
Yes.
and the program's called Blues in the Schools.
Yes. Yeah.
Tell us what that's all about.
I was introduced to this. We were doing a show in Dothan, Alabama, and they asked if I would do the blues in the schools. And I'm thinking, man, I don't know if I can. I don't know what I would say, you know. And so they kind of gave me some points of you were talking to, I think it was like middle school age, so like middle school and maybe beginning high school age students, and 3 groups of like 60 students or so. And it was kind of just like, you know, I have molded it where it's pretty much follows that same format, where I spend a lot of time talking about the roots of the blues, for sure. Like, here's you know, I do this thing where it's like, okay, can you shout out a band that you love? Okay, well, you wouldn't have that if you didn't have Prince. You wouldn't have Prince if you didn't have Chuck Berry. You wouldn't have Chuck Berry if you didn't have Sister Rosetta Tharpe. You know, and so I try and show them that the present has all these connections. It's threaded into the past, you know, and just bring them this music in another way, because so many kids are like, oh my gosh, my baby left me blues, oh, you know, and they don't connect with it. But it's like, man, you could write a blues about how much homework you got to have, you know. So you know, I always touch on that stuff, and it's always something I'm learning as well. You know, I'm always trying to dig back and find those connections to everybody. But I also talk about just how important it is to listen to your passion and follow it if you can. Because there's so many opportunities to like, oh, okay, I'm just going to go the path that is set before me, that everybody else has gone. And it's a sure thing. You know, it's definitely a sure thing to, I don't know, get an accounting degree. My mom has an accounting degree. I'm not knocking it at all, you know, but you can definitely get a job, but not everybody's going to be happy being an accountant. You know, somebody's going to be, I have more creative juices than this, and this job isn't doing it for me. And so I think it's really important. And it was certainly important to me to see Chris Vidala, who was like, oh, you can play music for a living? I had no idea, you know. I didn't know you could teach it. I didn't know you could play it. I didn't know you could tour the world. Like, so all that opened my eyes to, oh, I can follow my passion. There's a job here for me. So a lot of it is kind of like, well, what do you want to do? What do you want to be? Like, here's some, if you want music, you know, I'm here for you. Let me know. But I think it's super important for kids that age to hear that. And you know, if it doesn't work out, you can always fall back on something else, but you might as well try, right? Might as well go for it. That's what I try and emphasize, at least.
All right. Now we're getting into the question and answer segment of the show.
Beautiful.
What makes you happy?
Lots of things. I would say family does. I'm very close with my mom, and I have 3 younger sisters, and they're all incredible, and I like spending time with them. I like hiking and cooking, and you know, I really love like deep one-on-one conversations as well. Like, that's a big thing for me. So all that, being loved, you know, all that makes me feel happy.
What makes you mad?
I think when people kind of are unaware of everybody else, you know, they live their life and without regard to anyone else. I think that usually it's at least a pet peeve.
What's your favorite curse word?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I always liked fudge. It's close enough to the real thing, but without the real thing.
What profession would you not like to do?
Oh, okay. Man, I'm thinking of like Mike Rowe and all those dirty jobs he had to do. Yeah, I think he did one like where he had to like pull snakes out of something and relocate them. I wouldn't want to do that. I'm not a snake fan. I'll stay 50 feet away from them. That's fine with me.
What is your favorite thing to do when you're on tour during your downtime?
Oh, eat. Totally. I find a good restaurant and I'm just going to town. Eat or hike. One of the two.
What does Vanessa Collier have planned for 2021?
So I've been working on a couple things. I'm working on sort of like a cover video series with a couple friends, different friends from all different parts of my musical life. So hopefully connecting people from all over the world. And then the second thing that I'm super excited about is sort of starting an online masterclass for saxophone. So it could be all ages, but I'm going to cover all the basics, starting from breath work and working your way always all the way up to like extended techniques, kind of multiphonics, altissimo, all the stuff that I get asked about all the time. And I'm really excited because I think through my teaching and through Chris's teachings, I can pass on some stuff that's really makes it. I continue to teach now, so it's made my students very successful, and I just want to share what I know.
Where can people find out about you and your music?
The central hub is vanessacollier.com. From there, you can get to Facebook and Instagram and all that kind of stuff. But that's the main hub with the bios and the show dates and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. Vanessa, I want to thank you for taking your time to stop by and chat with me tonight.
Thank you for having me.
It's always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you.
The first time I saw you perform was at the Twisted Tail.
Oh, yeah.
And you blew me away. It actually was also the first night as I was sitting at the bar listening to you, and standing next to me was Mikey Jr.
Yeah.
Two young guys, Zach Lees and John Hay.
Yeah.
John played with you for a little bit.
Yeah, about 2 weeks. Yeah.
Now he's moved on. He's
Yeah.
So where can people see you perform live? Hopefully sometime in 2020. Do you have anything booked?
Yeah. So we have a date in Annapolis at the Ram's Head on Stage. That's March 11th. And then right now, assuming it's still gonna run, we're at Spring in the Blues in Florida. That's Jacksonville Beach, I believe. And that's April 10th, I think. I'm pretty sure that's April 10th. But we're filling in dates for sure. I've got some duo dates with Arthur, which is the one in Annapolis, and then the festival will be a full band date. First one in an entire year. So hey, should be fun. But yeah, we're filling it in. So if you check vanessacollier.com, I'll be updating that website with what's upcoming.
Okay. Well, take care. Be safe. I wish you all the best in your musical journey.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
We're going to leave you tonight with the title track from Vanessa Collier's latest CD, Heart on a Line, right here, Interview of the Blues.
I've been waiting for somebody else to be strong, so I don't have to hold their world up. I can just tend to my own, 'cause my heart's been bruised from overuse. Gonna take a break for one in a while. I'm going home, kicking my shoes off, pouring a glass of red wine. I'm going home, gonna say no, at least this time. I'm going home, stop putting my heart on the line. Feels good to help somebody. Feels so good to help somebody. Feels good to help somebody. Feels so good to help somebody. Feels good to help somebody.